This is based in a true story, so stay tuned for a valuable lesson. Once upon a time in a village, there lived an extremely generous young woman who was known for her kindness and willingness to help others. She was so generous that she would often lend money to people in need without expecting to get it back. She believed that helping others was the most important thing in life, and that money was just a means to an end. She also gave away other things, such as food, clothing, and even land. She owned a small piece of land on the outskirts of town, but when a neighbor asked her to borrow a part of it to build a chicken coop, she didn't hesitate to agree. She was so selfless that she didn't even think about how this would affect her own plans for the land. The neighbor promised to return the land as soon as he was done using it, but of course he never did. He built the chicken coop and started making money from selling eggs without giving her back the land she had lent him. Now, if you ask me, this woman was actually quite naive and a little bit stupid, but hey, we all have our weaknesses, right? Anyway, despite being taken advantage of by her neighbors, she still remained kind-hearted and continued to help those in need. She believed that everyone deserved a chance, and that sometimes people just needed a little help to get back on their feet. She was so innocent and pure-hearted that it made people feel guilty for taking advantage of her. But there were some people who weren't so easily swayed by her charm. They saw her generosity as a weakness and used it to their advantage, exploiting her kindness for their own selfish reasons. Despite the hardships she faced, she never lost hope. She continued to believe in the goodness of people and never gave up on helping others. And then one day, her extreme generosity cost her dearly. Let me explain. As I said, she owned a small piece of land near the river, which was perfect for building a house. So she decided to use it as collateral to take out a loan and finally start building the house of her dreams. She worked hard as a seamstress to save enough money for the down payment and had even managed to save a small amount of money to cover the cost of construction materials. However, when she went to the bank to apply for a loan, she was turned down because she didn't have enough money saved up. The banker told her that she needed to put down more money or find someone to co-sign the loan for her. But she didn't want to give up on her dream, so she decided to try a different bank. At the second bank, she met a man who seemed willing to help her. He told her that he could approve the loan if she could put down 50% of the total cost of the house. This was more than she had saved up, but she was desperate to start building her house, so she agreed. The man told her that he knew a person who could lend her the money she needed, but it would come at a high interest rate. Still, she was willing to pay any price to make her dream a reality. She took out the loan and borrowed the money from the man's friend. However, what she didn't know was that the man had made a deal with his friend to take a large cut of the profits from the loan. When she found out, she tried to renegotiate the terms of the loan, but it was too late. Her house was now in foreclosure, and she owed more money than she could ever repay. Now, when her neighbors heard about her financial problems, they thought it was a great opportunity to take advantage of her. They offered to buy her house for a low price, knowing that she had no other choice but to accept their offer. She was devastated, but she had no other option. She sold the house to her neighbors for half the price and moved into a small shack on the remaining piece of land. It was a far cry from the comfortable life she had imagined for herself, but she was determined to make the best of it. She started growing crops and raising chickens on the small piece of land and tried to rebuild her life. However, her neighbors, who had taken advantage of her generosity, had no intention of letting her get back on her feet. They harassed her, stole her crops, and made her life miserable. She felt betrayed by the people she had trusted and was heartbroken over the loss of her home. Now, she was broken, and nobody cared about it. The constant harassment and abuse eventually took a toll on her physical and emotional health. She became sick and weak and was unable to continue working on her farm. Her neighbors, seeing that she was no longer a threat, stopped harassing her, but they did not show any mercy or compassion towards her. In fact, they started spreading rumors about her, saying that she was crazy and had lost her mind. One day, she was found wandering around the village, delirious and muttering to herself. Her neighbors, who had been waiting for an excuse to get rid of her, took this opportunity to accuse her of being a danger to society and demanded that she be locked up in an institution for the mentally ill. The villagers, who had always been suspicious of her strange behavior, believed the rumors and supported her neighbors' accusations. She was taken to the institution against her will and spent her last days alone and forgotten. No one visited her or inquired about her condition. She died a few months later, and her body was buried in a mass grave with other patients who had died. Her neighbors, having gotten away with their wicked deeds, continued to live their lives as if nothing had happened. They did not feel guilty for what they had done to her, nor did they offer any condolences to her family or friends. They were unmoved by her tragic fate and lived in ignorance of the karma that was catching up to them. The woman's story serves as a warning to those who are too trusting and naive. While generosity and kindness are admirable qualities, it's important to be aware of the dangers of helping those who are not deserving. The woman's tragic fate was the result of her inability to recognize the evil intentions of others, and her refusal to protect herself from those who wish to harm her. Her story reminds us that while it's important to be compassionate and helpful, it's equally important to be cautious and discerning when dealing with other people. Many people take advantage of her simplicity and kindness, but none of them could take advantage of her like the men of the village did. The same people who took her land and stole her house from her were the ones who denounced her to the authorities as insane and dangerous. That shows how cruel and inhumane these people really were. You might say she was partly to blame for what happened to her, because she was too trusting and generous. She never considered that the people she was helping could turn against her and harm her. She should have been more careful and discerning when dealing with other people. Also, maybe she shouldn't have been so reckless with her money and resources. Some people are just born with a heart of gold and can't say no to people in need, and this woman was one of them. She couldn't bear to see anyone in pain or suffering and would do anything to help them. But while her generosity was admirable, it also made her vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. The people who knew her well understood her weaknesses and used them against her. They knew that she wouldn't think twice about lending them money or helping them in any way she could. They took advantage of her kindness and manipulated her into doing things that benefited them, all while she remained blissfully unaware of their true intentions. I'm afraid that in her case, the world was simply too harsh and unforgiving a place for such a pure-hearted soul. In a world where everyone is fighting for their own interests, she was too trusting and naive to survive. If only she had been more street smart and able to read people's intentions, maybe she could have avoided the tragedy that befell her. That was the story of a woman who was too good for this world. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.